A year ago, the Texans hit the lottery with old C.J. Stroud, Will Anderson Jr. The Rams crushed the draft and did it without a first-round pick, and the Packers stacked their wide receiver and tight end rooms with youth and depth. Today, and with the first pick, we'll tell you which 2024 draft classes will have the biggest impacts for their respective teams this upcoming season. I'm Ryan Wilson. That handsome devil, of course, is Rick Spielman. This is episode 161. And Rick, before we get going, how many days until the 2025 NFL draft?
You know, I don't know if I like this board or not.
What?
It upped the show a little bit now that we know we have new technology.
Yeah.
But I'm kind of old school. I liked it when you kind of wrote the numbers on the board. But for progress sake, I will tell you, Ryan, that on our new video screen, there are 330 days left until the 2025 NFL draft.
Rick, this is the face of disgust. You complain day in and day out about how you wanted to up our budget. I scraped together $25 worth of used television here, spent countless minutes making this graphic, and now you want to go back to paper and pencil is what I'm hearing.
It wasn't paper and pencil. It's kind of like one of those flip things.
Right. It's how they used to that's how they keep score at Fenway Park, basically.
Yeah. And if anything ever happens where there's a surge or a power surge at your house, then we're done. How am I supposed to know how many days are left until the draft? We should have some kind of manual backup.
That's a good point. That's a good point. All right. I'll make a note of that. We're in the summer. I got plenty of free time, so I'll work on the backup board. By the way, speaking of which, Rick, now that we're now full into the offseason, we'll be ramping down to just one podcast a week, but do not fret because there's still summer scouting and the 2025 NFL season as we record this, Rick, is just 99 days away. Maybe I can use the other countdown board for that. In the meantime, we've graded every single draft class by division, and last week we looked at which rookies will have the biggest individual impacts in year one. All those episodes are in the podcast feed. And finally, something new here, Rick, for the old school listeners, because we got a few requests here. If you want to get in touch with us, I create an email address, WTFPdraft@gmail.com. So you can shoot us an email there if you want to talk to us the old school way. And of course, you can always leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcast, and we'll answer any mailbag question you may have there on an upcoming summer mailbag show. All right, Rick.
What's that email address again?
WTFP Draft with the first pick. So WTFP Draft, one word, @gmail.com.
At gmail.com.
Yeah. We don't have a company account like you. No company account for the for the podcast email account. But folks are asking for it, and they want to go back to 1995. I'm all for it. It's a simpler time.
I'm just telling you, we're moving my mom on the island today. From her stilt house, which is 12 feet up. So we're moving her to a modular home that's closer to the ground. And I had the cable guy out there yesterday, and he goes, "This is the first time, I think, in a long time that I didn't install internet into a house because my mom refuses to give up her cable box. She doesn't want internet. She wants her flip phone, and we have to get this cable box thing taken care of," which is so 90s, if I can say it myself.
But they still actually will install that for you?
They'll install it, yeah.
I wonder if that's a Florida thing because of there's an older population in Florida, whereas maybe a hipper, younger state, they might be more difficult to do.
So do you think at all the hipster coffee shops that you take me to, that they have a cable box, or is there internet in the hipster coffee shops?
Internet only. And producer Harry's with us again today. And since it's summer, I'll tell a quick story, Harry, in case you haven't heard it. When we were down there for the draft 25 days ago or so in Stanford.
We need a countdown for that. Like, how many days will go where we at the draft, and then how many days until training camp, and then how many days until the regulars? You have about 6 or 7 countdown things you need to put in your background.
I have a wall of countdown clocks. But we were at the Stanford coffee shop. I won't name the place. Rick probably can't remember the name of the place. He'll remember the name of the code, though. And the coffee shop barista thought Rick was a homeless guy just trying to use the bathroom off the street, and he wouldn't let him use the bathroom. So that was
2012. That's the code to get into the bathroom.
2012. All right, let's do this, Rick. Going to look at the 2024 Impact Rookie classes. But before we do, let's take a quick look back at last year to see how we did there. And we'll start with your 3 teams. And I made even a letter grade for each of your teams. You had some good and some not so good. You had the Lions, the Panthers, and the Seahawks. The Lions, of course, crushed it. You may had, thankfully, never mind that your brother works for the Lions, and obviously he's an important part of what they do there. You had our buddy Pete Prisco, excuse me, tell you about 7th round pick Antoine Green, the wide receiver to UNC. So he saved that draft single handedly. So that's worth noting. But more importantly, you had some guy named Brian Branch, Sam Laporta, Jahmyr Gibbs, Jack Carpenter. 2 of those guys were first round picks. The other 2 were second round picks. They all contributed a ton. Jack Campbell probably the least of the group, but no crime in that. That defense is getting better, and he's going to be a big part of that. Gave that an A+.
Yeah, no, I thought they knocked it out of the park last year. They go against what everybody thinks they should do.
Yep.
Because they rely on smart, tough, passionate football players, regardless of position, that are going to help them win. Everybody criticized them with the Jahmyr Gibbs pick, which he ended up being a big, major part of that offense and an explosive playmaker. Don't look at the position, Ryan. You always look at the position and criticize, well, he's a running back. That's not. He is an offensive playmaker. So,
absolutely.
Yeah, he was a major part of that offense and why they advanced so far. Jack Campbell, I'll say this, the more you watched him and the way he played towards the end of the season, I don't think there's any doubt that he's going to be a really good starting linebacker for him this year. Maybe the weakness was his pass coverage, but I thought he improved in that through the year. Sam Laporta became, a Pro Bowl caliber tight end, not only in the receiving game, but what he does after the catch and what an explosive playmaker he was in the red zone for him. So, and then Brian Branch just speaks for itself. And we're going to talk about this is a teaser. This is how you do this. And we're going to talk about our 2024 rookie impact. But I will tell you, Brian Branch ran in the 4.5s, but like we said, plays a lot faster than that.
What's the lesson, Rick?
The lesson is trust what you see on tape. So you can use analytics, you can use everything we use to try to make better decisions, but always trust what you see on tape. And I wouldn't be surprised, and we'll talk about this later in the show, if he doesn't end up playing some safety as well this year.
Little teaser. You took the time off and got better. Love it. Let me ask you this quickly. If you had to redraft these players, in which order would you now take them based on a year of data?
Boy, I mean, Branch probably would have went before Campbell. Laporta would have went before Campbell. I still would have taken Jahmyr Gibbs, but I would have went Gibbs, Laporta, Branch, Campbell.
And I think you can make an argument between Laporta and Gibbs too as your first pick.
Yeah. Laporta. Yeah.
Whew. So they got basically 4 first-round picks in the first 2 rounds.
Yeah.
All right, A+ for Rick.
Yeah.
Good start of the school year, Rick. Next up. Okay, well, you got a good grade, and you started messing around and not studying Carolina Panthers. Look, okay. I get it. We both love Bryce Young. I think you like Mingo a little bit more than me, but whatever. I thought he had an opportunity to come in there and perhaps do some things. Absolutely nothing went right for this team from start to finish. They are a completely revamped team on both sides of the ball, new coaching staff. Hopefully that changes things for Bryce. I saw some comments from Bryce that he and Canales have hit things off, and hopefully the success that Canales had with Russ in Seattle and Baker in Tampa rubs off on Bryce in Carolina. I gave this an F. I couldn't in good conscience do anything more than that. I love Bryce. I think he's going to turn it around, but last year was tough to watch.
Yeah, this one was a little hard, but I don't know if it was all Bryce Young, if it was all just because of how far behind. We probably anticipated that they'd be a lot farther ahead, especially with a new coaching staff coming in. They had 22 gurus in that quarterback room, which was probably too many. I thought Bryce was drinking through a fire hose all season, didn't have a lot of support up front. But if you look through there, Bryce Young, we've talked about a million times. Mingo, I was a little bit disappointed in the drops. I thought he got better towards the end of the season, but earlier in the season, too many drops. Hopefully he will take a jump this year. DJ Johnson ended up actually flashing some as a pass rusher, the kid out of Oregon, but I believe he got hurt. And then Chandler, who was the
Zavala at NC State?
Yeah, he struggled in pass protection, but he is a dominant run blocker, and they didn't get much out of anyone else in that draft class. So hopefully sophomore year will be a better year for these guys. But it was a disappointing season, disappointing draft class if you graded here today.
Yeah, and you talked about this with C.J. Stroud, that Bobby Slowick started off fire hosing them and then realized they had to dial it back, and then things started to click, and it just felt like Bryce never had a chance to get his head above water, and it was partly his fault and partly the offensive line's fault, partly play calling, partly receiver. There was everything. They have Deontay Johnson now, who literally told The Athletic that he said, man, guys weren't getting open last year, and he wasn't wrong. But now this makes things easier for Adam Thielen. Hopefully makes things easier for Jonathan Mingo in year 2. The other thing I want to talk about with Jonathan Mingo, you talked about this too with Rashee Rice. Sometimes you struggle early as a young wide receiver because you don't know what you're doing, and compound that with an offense that appears to be going backwards, and you just don't have a chance for success.
No, and I think, adding Leggett too.
Leggett. God, I forget about him. Yeah.
So they're going to have some better playmakers on the offensive side of the ball. I know they went and tried to improve that offensive line in free agency. So we'll see. And it's just from the word on the street is that they had like 4 or 5 different offenses they were trying to combine. It was just a total mess from day one all the way through. All
right. Strong start. Then you took the middle of the year off, and then you bounced back strong at the end of the school year with the Seattle Seahawks. Devin Witherspoon, we love. JSN, Jack Smith and Jigba was the first wide receiver taken. Struggled a little bit early. Zach Charbonnet, we talked about last year, had some good reps. They had a good draft. They gave us B+.
Yeah, no, Witherspoon I thought was towards, he was hurt a little bit, had the hamstring at the beginning of the season, but came on, had the first game, the pick 6, I believe.
Daniel Jones.
Yeah. So, and then he ended up, I thought, should have been or was one of the Defensive Rookie of the Year finalists the way he played. So, Jackson Smith, the Jigba, just like all these other young receivers, once he found his groove in the second half of the year, he's going to be an excellent slot receiver. Very good route runner, very good hands, and start to be productive. And Charbonnet gives him that 1-2 punch with Walker. I think that's a great running back combination. Walker has some issues staying healthy, but I think Charbonnet can step in and do things. They didn't get much out of that rest of that class, to be honest with you. The one kid I just had a note on is Jake Bobo, the receiver.
Yeah, Jake.
Yeah, ended up playing pretty good. All of a sudden, towards the end, I think he had 3 touchdowns towards the end of the season.
And he was undrafted, right?
Yeah, he was a college free agent.
4.9 will do that to you.
Yeah, through the free agents they signed. And Bobo, I thought they got a steal for where they got him.
Absolutely. And he actually played better than, again, not a Brian Branch situation because he ran a 4.9. He played faster than that. And I was talking to a wide receivers coach during the draft and talking about our guy, Marcus Rosemy-Jack Saint, and Jake Bobo. And he said when Jake Bobo came.
Our guy, your guy, my guy.
Okay, your guy. I thought you were going to push him off on me. But he said when Bobo came to work out with them last year, you could tell that he had a little juice. He said Marcus is a little tougher sell just because he wasn't quite as twitchy. So Jake Bobo took advantage of the opportunity. Anthony Bradford played a few snaps as well last year, but I think they have their offensive line set in terms of competition because they drafted Christian Haynes this time around. But
yeah, Bradford actually had 10 starts.
Okay.
Just like all these young guys, better run blockers than they are pass protectors.
All right, B+. So you finished strong. Let's go to my 3 teams. You're going to be shocked to hear this, but I started with the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Really?
Can you believe that?
Yeah. Low-hanging fruit.
Low-hanging fruit. Broderick Jones, they traded up to get Broderick Jones, the tackle out of Georgia. He played a ton on the right, and I don't think he played any left tackle last year unless the left tackle was injured. His name always escapes me. But he'll have a chance to play left tackle this year because of the guy they drafted. We'll talk about that later, I'm sure. Joey Porter Jr., they got pick 32, the top pick in the second round by way of the Chase Claypool trade from the Bears. Keanu Benton contributed. Nick Herbig was a situational pass rusher. Darnell Washington didn't add much as a third-round pick. He's, Pete Prisco, again, might have been right about it. He should just turn himself into a tackle. Because you actually talked about this, Rick. He ran into the 4.6s, didn't seem to play that fast. So he probably dropped some weight during the pre-draft process, and maybe he's a 4.75, 4.8 guy. Who knows? But either way, I gave this class a B.
Yeah, no, I would agree with you.
Okay. What do you think about this? Joey Porter Jr. said the other day, again, I don't care that he said it. I'm just asking you. He goes, I'm the best cornerback in the league.
Great.
What else should he have said?
Huh?
What else would you want him to say is my question. I mean, that's what you want him to say, right?
I am going to prove that I'm the best quarterback in this league.
Okay, fair enough. Had a surprising start to the year. Again, another example of we waste too much time between the end of the season and the draft because we talked ourselves into him being stiff. He didn't tackle well. He'll tell you that. He got better as a tackler, but you could argue that he was probably a top 31 pick, first rounder based on the way he played last year.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
All right. Broderick, Keanu Benton's going to have an opportunity to play a little bit more as Cam Hayward gets older. So he was
he's flashed now. I watched a couple of snaps on him. He's a really good run defender, and I think he is going to develop into even a better pass rusher as well. Not going to be a double-digit sack guy, but this guy is an underrated athlete for his size.
Yep, absolutely. And then Nick Herbig was a favorite of mine coming into the draft, and he got some situational opportunities. Undersized. So let me ask you this. I don't know how many sacks he had. Let's say he had 4 sacks last year, and he weighs 230. Do you want him to add weight, or are you okay using him as a designated pass rusher for his career?
Well, that's what you drafted him for, then keep him where he is.
Yeah.
But he may, I don't know what sack total he had, but he was disruptive off the edge, and sometimes pressures or forcing incompletes without getting sacks is a valuable asset to have.
Yeah, so you put 20 pounds on him and then he can't do anything, so it doesn't make sense.
Right.
All right. The moment we've all been waiting for. The Los Angeles Rams. A++.
You
without a first. Yeah, I got the Rams according to the rundown from last year.
God, these staff meetings without me involved. I go on a couple side jobs the last couple of weeks, and next thing I know, it's like everything's shifted.
No, this is my last year's class.
Yeah, I know.
Oh yeah, this is nothing changed. You just go look at the rundown from a year ago. You didn't rewatch the show to get prepared for this?
Okay. Yeah, I took the Rams.
So the Rams, Steve Avila, we don't even talk about him because you liked him. We only talk about the guys you didn't like. Byron Young, you've talked about him to death. Kobe Turner. Warren McClendon played a little bit. Davis Allen, some guy named Puka Nacua. This is a really, 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 really good draft class, especially for not having a first-round pick. Steve Avila started day one. He'll be a starter again. And then this team's going to be even better with the draft class I had here. Yeah, any comments?
Oh, good job. Way to pat yourself on the back.
I didn't make the picks.
I do not like self-promoters.
I didn't make the picks. I graded it. You're more than happy. You're more than welcome to grade it. You want to give it a grade?
I'll have to go back and look at the show from last year.
Oh, that's so funny. You don't believe. Why would I leave the next one on here? The Falcons. They had Arthur Smith ended up getting fired because it felt like he couldn't manage all the talent he had around him. The quarterback situation was certainly not a great one for him either. Desmond Ridder lost his job several times throughout the season. Taylor Heineke was also on the roster. They've gone out and got not only Kirk Cousins, Michael Penix Jr., and have moved on from Arthur Smith. Of course, Bijan Robinson was the 8th overall pick, and then Matthew Bergeron, I think we both liked him. I thought he had a chance to play outside, but everyone else thought he was inside, and he played inside. Zach Harrison, they drafted. He didn't do a whole bunch. The edge rusher at Ohio State, we saw him at his pro day. Clark Phillips, good player out of Utah. Not as athletic as perhaps you'd want. He would have gone a little higher in the 4th round because of that. But I think Bijan and Bergeron basically got most of the reps on a team that felt like they underachieved. I gave this a C+.
Yeah, way to go.
Okay.
No, I would have gave it a C.
Well, you don't do pluses.
Yeah.
Well, I think this isn't Bijan's fault. It's the fact that Bijan was underutilized. It felt strange to me how he was used.
Yeah. Yet you gave Carolina an F.
Well, I mean, what would you give that a C? That's the Carolina class? Okay. Yeah, maybe it was a little harsh. I do want Bryce to succeed for a number of reasons, but that was tough to watch. All right, so some of the best classes didn't make this list, Rick. The Texans, no one on God's green earth. If I told you that Will Anderson Jr. had a better season than C.J. Stroud, you would not have been surprised, probably, right?
No, I really liked Will Anderson coming out.
Yeah, and obviously C.J. Stroud's one of the best players on planet Earth. Tank Dell surpassed expectations as a 3rd-round pick, primarily because of his size. Nico Collins just got a new deal. He wasn't a rookie, but my point is that C.J. helped lift him up along with Bobby Sloak in that offense. Green Bay, I think a lot of that was dependent on how the quarterback played, and Jordan Love played really well. And then they have all those young wide receivers, those young tight ends. That group is really good. I like the Colts draft. Anthony Richardson got hurt, of course, but I think he's going to be pretty good. But even Josh Downs played well. Some of the guys on defense, Juju Brents, Jalen Johnson. And then one other class I'll mention, the Buccaneers.
Tampa Bay.
Trey Palmer, Kalijah Cansey, Yaya Diaby, Cody Mock, our guy Christian Itzian. And that's a pretty good haul.
Yeah.
Itzian was late round or undrafted. He was one of those.
I believe he was undrafted.
Yeah, so even better. All right. So that's a look back. We did, of course, talk about we hit on Detroit, Seattle, Pittsburgh, and LA in our predictions last year. Let's take a quick break, Rick, and we'll come back and we'll see which teams we predicted this year to have the most success this season right after this.
The Champions League final. This is as big as it gets. The kings of the Champions League. Dortmund are into the final.
Ain't gonna stop me now. This is the final round.
All his dreams coming true.
Dortmund versus Real Madrid in the UEFA Champions League final on CBS and streaming live on Paramount Plus.
By the way, Rick, June 1st, Champions League final, CBS Paramount Plus. Who you got?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't follow those leagues. I was disappointed someone from the Premier League, like Man City or somebody, didn't get in, even though they won it for, I believe, the third or fourth time. Klopp, from Liverpool, decided to retire and walk away. So Arsenal, it was great to see them rise back to the Premier League. Man U, they got some decisions to make this offseason.
Look at you.
So, and then
they won the FA Cup last weekend. They beat Man City 2-0 and 2-1, I think.
Job.
Yeah, perhaps. You hope. We'll see. But right, Real Madrid versus Dortmund. Real Madrid beat Man City in the semifinals, I believe. Dortmund is the upstart.
Did Dortmund go undefeated this year or something?
No, that was Leverkusen.
Oh.
Xabi Alonso. Come on, Rick.
Sorry. I got to get into the other leagues this summer. I'll do some research on that.
That's right. You got a lot to do. You're scouting EPL, Bundesliga, UCL, WNBA. You got a lot of side jobs.
Can't wait to be the WNBA mock draft expert next year.
I don't even know who the best player is coming out back in now that Caitlin Clark's gone. I'm still a Maya Moore fan. All right, let's go. We'll start with your three teams here, Rick, that you think have the best draft classes, most likely contribute in 2024. 99 days from now is when that starts. First up, the Commanders. I don't know if this qualifies as low-hanging fruit. This team struggled last year. Got a new coaching staff, got a new GM, have a new quarterback, a lot of new players. They have 6 picks in the first 3 rounds. I thought they crushed those. Started with Jaden Daniels, Johnny Newton, Mikey Sanders still, Ben Sinnott, Brandon Coleman, the guard tackle from TCU, Luke McCaffrey. All right. Sell me on the Commanders as being impacts.
Yeah, no, I think Jaden Daniels, they'll design an offense. Cliff Kingsbury's very familiar with athletic quarterbacks, and I think that he's got an opportunity to be special. If they handle him the right way, hopefully they don't inundate him like Bryce Young got overwhelmed last year, but I think he's going to be their franchise quarterback they've been missing for a long time. Johnny Newton, the only reason I think he slipped there because he had to get another foot surgery. And I think, he may be in a rotation this year because of Payne and Allen, but I wouldn't be surprised on how healthy he is as the season progresses and where they're at in the season if an Allen perhaps doesn't get put up on the trading block because they got a lot of money tied into those 2 defensive tackles, and it seems like they drafted an heir apparent maybe potentially to Allen. Sanders still, I think, is walking in as a starting Nick right off the bat. Sinnott, I don't need to say anything more about him. One of my favorite players of all time.
Apparently, yeah.
Yeah. Where I made some Sam Laporta comparisons to. He's behind Ertz, so he'll get plenty of opportunities to play. Coleman, I think, has to be a guard. And then Luke McCaffrey. Everybody was a little taken back that he went where he went right at the end of the 3rd round. But I think he's going to come in and going to get a significant amount of play time with McLaurin, with Dotson. I don't think they have any true number 3 receiver right now. And the way Luke had performed through the Senior Bowl, through the Combine, through the whole pre-draft process, I think they may have found someone that's going to make significant contributions to the offense this year.
So no thought about him challenging Cornelius Lucas left tackle, because that seems to be their biggest question as we sit here.
Yeah, and I don't know. We'll see. That that's one of the biggest things. But Allegretti, they signed from Kansas City. Biadic.
There you go.
Yeah, from Dallas. So they try to improve that offensive line up front. Cosme, I think, is a starting guard, and Wiley, who they signed from Kansas City years ago, I think is a functional right tackle. It'll be what's the left tackle, and can they stay healthy up front? And will Brandon Coleman push potentially for that left tackle spot? I just see him more as a guard athlete than a left tackle athlete.
Let me ask you a sort of a random question here. Jack Marucci, LSU's Director of Performance Innovation?
Yeah, I know who he is.
Okay, yeah. So he was the athletic trainer for 25 years. I'm just reading his bio now. I mentioned that because he was talking to Daniel Jeremiah and Bucky Brooks on Move the Sticks podcast this week. And it was really interesting because they've developed, and I don't know if this is LSU or if other people have it, but the sort of immersive goggles that you can wear as a player. And it allowed Jaden Daniels, he was talking about, to actually play the game in the stadiums where he was going to be in the SEC on the road, know where the shot clock was, to actually see the formations, to see the defensive shell that they were playing, whether it was cover 2 or cover 1 or whatever. And he basically said that Jaden Daniels got an extra 600 or so reps a week by just putting these goggles on, not getting hit, not getting hurt. And Jaden told him after the first game, and maybe in Mississippi State or Ole Miss, can't remember which, Jaden came to him and said this was incredibly helpful. Were you guys doing anything like that? Yeah. Was that on the table?
Yeah, we used a company called Striver that they would actually tape our practices, and then we would use those for training tape. They put on the goggles, and you could do a 360 view. We didn't do it in other stadiums. We didn't go that far. I didn't even know that, was an opportunity. I don't know if this is animated or if this is real, but basically they stitched this 360-degree tape to get film all together. So I put them on. It was incredible because it was at the quarterback level. So you can see what the quarterback was looking at. If you look left or you looked right, that's where the goggles would go to. And so they were able, as the quarterback was looking through the goggles, there was a big screen so the coach can see, why are you looking over here to your left? It reads to your left. Did you see the safety come down? And it's fine. Well, me being the slappy that I am, I would turn around and see if anyone was like picking their nose or anything. And you can see everyone standing in the background too.
But it occurred to me as Jack was talking that's one way to get a lot better incredibly over the course of one season, going from a guy sort of the Joe Burrow trajectory, being a day 3 guy maybe, to being one of the first or second quarterbacks taken. So obviously a lot has to do with Jaden being able to take in the information, but it's clear that he's willing to work hard. Jack said he was obviously he was often the first guy in the building, sort of thing, and then obviously being able to take in this information and use it.
Yeah. The blitz period was especially critical, and the backups who may get 1 or 2 snaps during blitz period, they would go back in virtual reality, watch this through the goggles, so they can pick up the blitzes and see everything that the reps they didn't get on the field. They were able to get those in this little room that we had. We actually had them hold a ball, and you can actually do drops and things like that in this room that we had. So
this is one of the things where you leave no stone unturned. So Washington obviously knew that Jaden did this, and if they don't have it, they probably made a point to get it, something like that. I mean, this is something that you would probably want to continue to use if he had success with it.
Yeah, no, everything you can, right, to make sure that this quarterback you took in the second pick overall in the 2024 draft, which was how many days ago?
What's that, 25 or so?
30?
35. I can't do the math.
So, but yeah, they'll do everything. And if they don't have it, I'm sure they'll look into it to see if there's value there or not.
All right. Next up for you. Who'd you go with next? Oh, look at this. I thought this was last year's. Nope, the Lions back in Detroit. Here we go.
Yeah, tease in the first segment.
I know. I can't keep up with everything. All right, so we've already talked about last year's class. This year's class, I don't know if it's going to be able to supersede it, but Terry and Arnold, they got at 24, which is nuts to think that Terry was still there. Then they got Ennis Rakestraw around later. We both loved him. One of the biggest surprise picks of the draft, they traded a third-round pick in next year's class to get up to round 4 to get Gio Manu, an offensive tackle out of British Columbia. Sione Vaki, who I think is he a running back on the roster now?
He's a football player.
Football player, okay.
That.
Makai Wingo, we saw him at the LSU Pro Day, the defensive lineman, and then Chris Mahogany, who went in round 6. I don't know if he had an injury or something happened because I liked him a little bit more than round 6. Either way, they got some depth in the interior defensive line.
Wingo, I think that was great value in the 6 because I think he can give them some nickel inline pass rush. Probably a poor man's those undersized guys, but poor man's Cansey from last year, not nearly as
Kalijah,
yeah, but similar type, those undersized guys that come in and potentially develop as a inline nickel pass rusher. And Mahogany is just a barroom brawler, and he fits exactly the style that they play up front. I was kind of shocked that he was still there in the 6th round. So I thought they got great value there. Now, they lost Jonah Jackson, when he left in free agency, but they went out and signed Kevin Zeitler to come in and be the starting guard. But Mahogany, I think, eventually will be one of their starting guards, maybe if not this year as they move on. And Manu is definitely a project, in my opinion. Freak athlete, freak size, but long way to go before he's on the field. But they needed to get better on the defensive side of the ball. And they went out and signed Davenport, DJ Reader. They traded for Carlton Davis, Tampa. So, and now you throw in Terrion Arnold and Rakestraw. Not only are they talented corners, but they have an edge to them, both of those guys. I would call them both. And when we talked about Rakestraw, especially during the draft, he was one of the few corners that I've seen in a long time that you will call a tone setter on defense, the way these guys hit. The other point that I made earlier is that even though Terrion Arnold only ran a 4.5, we said the same thing about Branch, but he plays a lot faster than that. And you talk about a guy that has no issues with self-esteem, which is a great trait to have.
We're taking criticism.
Huh?
Or taking criticism.
Yeah, because he takes it to heart, because he wants to be, in his mind, I think he thinks he's going to be the best corner in the NFL before his career said and done.
Both Terrion and Ennis feel like Aaron Glenn, not clones, but guys that he loves having play for him.
He loves guys that are tough and physical regardless of position, and these guys fit. When you looked at they take good football players. That's right. The number one priority. And there's no question the guys that they took, even the Utah running back / whatever they're going to play him, he is just a good football player. And that's how they win, because they take number one priority is not only character guys, but good football players.
I agree. Another team that's had back-to-back solid drafts. Last year's draft class was a good one. This one on paper looks to be really good. The Arizona Cardinals, Marvin Harrison Jr., we get that. Darius Robinson into round 1. That makes sense. Max Melton, the cornerback out of Rutgers, in round 2. Trey Benson has a chance to be an immediate impact player, the running back out of Florida State. Isaiah Adams, who you liked a little better than I did, they got him in round 3. Tip Raymond, Illinois teammate Isaiah Adams, tight end. And the list goes on. Oh, my gosh. It's got Dadrian Taylor-Demerson, another guy that we liked a lot. Christian Jones in round 5. He may have a chance to battle for the right tackle position and move Paris Johnson back over to the left side. I mean, it's hard to be upset with what they did with the 400 picks they had in this draft.
No, and I was like, they were just picking them off their board. Like we talked about Marvin Harrison Jr. to death. Darius Robinson, I think, is going to come in and start one of the defensive end spots. Max Melton was one of our favorite corners. At least I liked him. I don't know if you liked him.
I think you liked him a little more, but I liked him for sure.
But he can play inside and he can play outside. And he was another guy that just knocked the pre-draft process out of the park. Your guy, Trey Benson, who I think is going to be a great 1-2 punch with Connor in the backfield. And the reason I like Isaiah Adams, he is not a tackle athlete. And that's where he played at Illinois. But I loved his toughness, especially in the run game. He loves to finish, and I think they'll slide him inside, let him compete at one of the guard spots. And just another really good football player. Tip Raymond, the tight end from Illinois, is going to give them a more physical presence as a run blocker in the run game. And then one of my favorite safeties, Dadrion Taylor Demerson, who I think is one of the few athletic free safeties that I've seen that has range to cover sideline to sideline. I look at him like a Chauncey Gardner. So which Jonathan Gannon had a lot of success with. So they were able to upgrade their defensive side. I think a lot of these guys are going to have a major impact and get major play time on Arizona. And look for Arizona, I think, I don't think they're ready to compete with the big boys in the AFC East, but they're going to make some noise. And if Jonathan Gannon can take a depleted roster into Philly and beat Philly in Philly last year, they're going to give some people a run for the money, because that coaching staff, not that I'm biased because I worked with Gannon in Minnesota, I worked with Drew Petzing, the offensive coordinator, Nick Rawlis, the defensive coordinator, all came out of Minnesota while I was there, but I thought they did a great job for being undermanned from a personnel standpoint last year.
I think I get the sense that some folks in the media don't think the Cardinals can be very good. I think they have a chance to be really good. Kyler showed that he was better than I thought he might be coming off the ACL, and I think he's going to get better. And it'll
all depend on your guy, the guy that can stay healthy in college.
Mike Wilson, baby.
Pros, Michael Wilson. Hopefully, we'll be talking better about him next year.
Hey,
but you got a legit, true potential Pro Bowl type talent in Marvin Harrison Jr., and they haven't had that since D-Hop went to Tennessee.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've seen what explosive wide receivers can do for a young quarterback. And by the way, the other winner, besides Kyler Murray, now that Marvin Harrison Jr. is in Arizona, Michael Wilson Jr. All right, let's do a dollar bet here. 45 catches. Do you think he has 45 catches?
Who?
Or Michael Wilson.
Why don't we do bets on how many games he can actually stay healthy for?
Okay, how many games?
10.
Okay. I say 10 or more.
Okay, I'll go 10 or less.
All right. I'll make a note, producer Harry. I don't want you having to do everything around here. Michael Wilson Jr.
Does Harry do anything around here?
He's doing something back there, I'm sure.
Okay.
He's got his Tua shirt on, praying for a new deal for Tua. All right. That's it. Commanders, Lions, Cardinals. Those are Rick's three teams. Let's take a quick break, and we'll compare them to my three teams, which are all home runs, right after this.
We're finally back racing in Shanghai. Complex sequences and chicane, with fast runs ready for overtake. Shanghai, it's on.
All right, Rick. Let's talk about my three teams. The rookie classes have the chance to be the biggest impacts in the 2024 NFL season. First up, to give you a little Rick teaser here, the last team here is going to be an obvious choice. So I thought it'd mix things up with the first two teams, do something a little different.
When you're a host and an analyst for NFL on CBS, that there's 31 teams in the league, not just one team in the league. But
I know.
We'll get to your team last.
That's right. That's why I'm going to mix it up. And it's funny that you mentioned 31 because there are 31 owners, and the 32nd team has a bunch of owners, and that's the team I'm talking about, the Green Bay Packers. Again, their draft class, I feel like we put Brian Gutekunst in this box where, this is the guy that traded for Jordan Love when Aaron Rodgers was still on roster and Aaron got mad and so on and so forth. Turns out he was right.
Yeah.
Who cares? Right. He was right. Last year's draft class, we just talked about that. That was an absolute grand slam. This year's draft class feels pretty good. We'll see how it works out. I like Jordan Morgan a little bit more than you did. We'll see if he plays guard or tackle. I was reading some quotes from the coaching staff. Offensive line coach Luke Buck has said this about the short arms, which is one of the things we've talked about with Jordan Morgan in terms of where he might play. And he ended the quote by saying, "This is the athletic is where I got this. If your arms are too short, you better be really violent with your hands. That's our job, is to coach and teach that." And that reminded me of another buddy of ours who plays on the other side of the ball, Braden Fisk, because that was his approach to having short arms. But this may have been 10 years ago now. I was at the Super Bowl and I was talking to Dante Scarnecchia, the great offensive line coach with the Patriots forever, who's since retired, about short arms. This is the draft where.
Oh, you got to go to the Super Bowl?
It was great. Who was the Alabama left tackle that was drafted by the Bengals? Jonah had short arms.
Yeah.
In that draft. So that was the Nashville draft 5 or 6 years ago. And I was asking Dante Scarnecchia about short arms in general, and he said it doesn't matter how long or short your arms are because, when you're doing pass sets, your arms are pretty close to your body, and then you need the time to punch. He said Matt Light had short arms. He was a second-round pick, had a great career, so on and so forth. So I think sometimes you would like to have 38-inch arms to beat DeJuan Jones, but if you're a good technician, I think you can overcome that, and that'll be the question with Jordan Morgan. So obviously the Packers liked him. He may play tackle. He may play guard. They're not quite saying yet, so we'll see. Round 2, they got Edge Cooper, who I think was both our linebacker 1 at Texas A&M. He'll have a chance to play right away. They love Javon Bullard, a guy that we liked a lot too. He has a chance to start right away, the safety/nickel out of Georgia. Marshawn Lloyd, the running back out of USC, another third-round pick, has a chance to play early on. They moved on from Aaron Jones. They got Josh Jacobs. They still have A.J. Dillon. They just re-upped him. Looking and later into the draft, they got Keaton Oladapo, the safety out of Oregon, another guy that I really liked, Evan Williams, the safety out of Oregon. So they're stocking up that defense.
He was Oregon State, correct?
Oregon State. What did I say?
Yeah, Oregon.
Oh, Oregon State. And then Evan Williams was Oregon. So, right. So they stock up on the defense. They fill the needs along the offensive line. At the end of the day, I think it's going to come down to Jordan Love continuing to progress and those young receivers and tight ends progressing. But it felt like they filled the holes they needed to fill.
And they got more athletic because of Jeff Hafley becoming the DC, who was the head coach of Boston College last year. They're going from an odd front to an even front, and they need more athletic. They needed to have better speed on the defensive side of the ball. And Xavier McKinney, who they signed from the New York Giants, now they added this group of young, talented rookies that are athletic and can cover the field. So they're transitioning, I think, the type of players they were drafting under Joe Barry to what Jeff Hafley has envisioned as far as traits at each position to make that defense go.
And Hafley talked about recruiting Javon Bullard when he was at BC and obviously losing out to Georgia, but he's known him for however many, 4, 5, 6 years now. So he was certainly happy to be reunited with him. And they also had the last pick, almost one of the last picks in the entire draft, Kalen King, cornerback out of Penn State, who we talked about in summer scouting school last year as a possible top 32, top 50 guy. He just had a tough season. Hopefully it was an injury and he bounces back from that because his tape in 2023 wasn't nearly as good as it was in 2022. All right, next up, the Indianapolis Colts. Another team that had a good draft last year, and I thought they had a steady as she goes, check the boxes, really good draft this year as well. Laiatu Latu, first defensive player taken, 15th overall, the edge rusher. I don't think we ever talked about Latu and the Colts in the pre-draft millions of mock drafts that we did, but I get it. They need edge rush help, and he is juiced up. He's not as strong as Dallas Turner. He's not as strong as Jared Verse, but he's a technician. Then they get A.D. Mitchell in round 2, a first-round talent. And then the question becomes, I guess you figure this out in the upcoming weeks and months, but Alec Pierce is probably put on notice, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. You have Michael Pittman Jr., and you have Josh Downs. Alec Pierce has got to start playing like a number 2.
Yeah, because A.D. Mitchell is coming, and it sounds like he is going to take no prisoners for falling in the draft.
Yeah, Chris Ballard was mad. A.D. Mitchell was mad. He got a lot of mad guys about where A.D. Mitchell was drafted. Matt Gonsalves went in round 3. When he's healthy, he's going to have a chance to start inside. Tanner Bortolini, I liked a lot. Had a good season. I thought he had an up-and-down Senior Bowl, but whatever. Tested really well. He can play center. My guy, Anthony Gold, wide receiver, Oregon State, day 3 guy. And then Jalen Carley is the safety out of Missouri. We didn't talk about him during the pre-draft process. I don't think we talked about him once. But he's going to have a chance to earn some playing time because of the depth concerns in the secondary in the safety position. And then Jalen Simpson, the other safety I liked out of Auburn, as another young man they got. So again, you're checking boxes. This is dependent on your quarterback being healthy, and Anthony Richardson's now throwing again. But there's no reason they can't be competitive in that division.
No, and they were competitive last year. It came down to the end of the season. So adding, and to me, Chris Ballard is one of the best drafters and best personnel men in the NFL. And now they're another team that really looks to draft what they believe are really good football players, and he doesn't care. He's going to take what he wants. He doesn't care if the outside influencers say, you need this, you need that. He's going to follow his board, and he's going to take good football players. So I think the whole key will be, can Anthony Richardson stay healthy? Can he take a step in year 2? Because they have enough talent around him.
Absolutely. And I was looking, where'd I have it? Let me see. Oh, I talked about this yesterday on HQ, but just in terms of how the quarterback landscape has changed, this is a little bit off topic here, but the Bears' first 8 games, they're Tennessee, Houston, Indianapolis, all year 2 quarterbacks. Then they play Matthew Stafford and the Rams. Then it's Carolina, Jacksonville, Washington, Arizona, all young quarterbacks. Trevor Lawrence and obviously Kyler Murray have been around a little bit longer, but Jaden Daniels will probably start that game, Bryce Young. But the point is that we've sort of turned the page on the Drew Breeses and Tom Brady's and Peyton Manning's of the world, and turns out the NFL is still okay. The quarterback situation is still pretty good.
Yep, they'll be fine.
All right, finally, the moment you've all been waiting for. My third team, Rick. You want to take any guesses as to who it might be?
Yeah, I would say it's probably the Pittsburgh Steelers, just a wild hunch, but I'm surprised that you didn't give them the number 1 spot.
I wanted to create a little suspense.
Oh, I was on the edge of my seat who you're going to pick.
On paper, this draft class feels better than last year's draft class, doesn't it? With Broderick Jones, Keanu Benton, and Joey Porter Jr., or is that too rich?
Well, we'll see. Yeah, well, according to you, yeah, this is way better. So you'll get another A++ again to yourself.
Probably, yeah. Troy Fautanu has been working on the right side, the tackle out of Washington, who played left tackle for the Huskies last season. Zach Frazier, they had a huge needs at center. They got Zach Frazier in the second round. Roman Wilson has a chance to be the number 2 or number 3 receiver now that Deontay Johnson's gone. Peyton Wilson was a steal if he's able to stay healthy at the end of the third. Mason McCormick, another interior offensive lineman we liked. He'll probably add some depth early on, and then they got some depth on the defensive line and in the secondary with Logan Lee and Ryan Watts. So there's a chance for 2.5 or 3 of these guys to be day 1 starters, mostly out of need. And then the question becomes, as always, what are you going to get from your quarterback? Russ Wilson's been taking the snaps. He's doing all the right things, so on and so forth. And at the end of the day, it only matters once you start playing football. But so far, so good on that front. It's hard to be – I don't know what else they could have done to improve this draft.
Well, of course not. I mean, you're looking at it through a very narrow lens, but they did address offensive line need, which was huge for them because – especially with Arthur Smith coming in, they're going to be a more physical team up front. I think the 2 rookies will end up being starters for them at the opening of the season, and they are the type of players that Arthur Smith, I think, and Mike Tomlin were looking for on being the physicality that they need to run the football because they're going to have to run the football.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. All right, Rick. That's it for our Impact Rookie classes. But before we go, I wanted to get your thoughts on some news this offseason. I read from your buddy, Tom Pelissero, who you've known forever. Everyone has since reported this, but he tweeted this out yesterday on May 28th as we're recording this. NFL Players Association is working to finalize a proposal to overhaul the offseason starting as soon as next year, which would eliminate voluntary on-field workouts in the spring in favor of longer training camps, ramp-ups, with players reporting in mid-June to early July. And I saw Albert Breer, who you also know works at SI, tweet out that coaches think this is an absolutely terrible idea. It's going over like the Hindenburg, I think was the phrase that he used. Shelby Harris, defensive lineman for the Browns, said nobody wants this. Tom did go on to tweet that the union's been seeking feedback of the plan from players, a majority of whom support the change, sources say. I don't know if that's exactly if everyone agrees with that. What are your thoughts as a GM of having to sort of to shake things up in the summer when June is typically when people get a little break?
Well, the one thing that I think hurts the players a little bit is that 6-week break or 4-week break between training camp and The OTAs, I think that it is a mistake if they don't have the OTAs, especially when you have an opportunity to finally get your hands on that rookie class, because nowadays the rookies have to be part of that roster, have to be part of playing on Sundays. And the more time you can spend with them, the better opportunity they have of developing. Now, it's already volunteer. So if I saw Cam Hayward, we can stay on Pittsburgh. How much OTAs does he need?
Right.
I know he's looking for a new contract. There's some guys that are holding out, not holding out because they can miss, but they do have the mandatory mini camp coming up. So maybe that's the only 3 days that they show up. I just think that, man, would that be a long season if you come at the end of June? Now, I understand end of June till February.
Oof.
That seems like it's even longer season. And especially, if there's talk right now, potentially, I don't know, this will happen, going to 18 regular season games.
It's happening.
So if you're doing 18 regular season games, 2 preseason games, that is I could just tell you from just a mental break. And I understand you get some bye weeks in between there, but coming in at the end of June, after you just got off the draft, that is, and I don't know what that will look like, if that's like kind of organized team activities like phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and then you get into pads. But I think that would be a mistake just because of the length of time that those guys would be in the building. And
right.
Everybody, not only physically, but mentally, needs a reset as well.
Now, is this something where you would approach the owner, even if the owner didn't ask for your opinion, and because if they have to vote on this? I think this is
every owner's
the
going to
union
issue.
Yeah, go ahead.
They're going to ask the coaches. They're going to ask the person. Yeah, they're not going to vote without getting your opinion on it.
This may be a union issue, so maybe they won't be voting on it. But if they were, that's something you would say, look, this is not a great idea for the organization.
Yeah, and you'd have to go back into a lot of research, and I just, the thing that sticks out to me the most is, geez, you're just coming in at the end of June and you're not season doesn't end till, and now who knows if they have 18 games, you push the Super Bowl to the first week in March or till end of February, which it is almost now. That's a lot of football.
I think you should just have the Super Bowl every year in Indianapolis, and then the next day you can start the combine.
Just start the combine, bring them in. We can knock out the combine as well.
Oh man! All right, so I just want to get your thoughts on that, because that's something that's down.
You have a thought on it?
Here's my thing: is the current system broken? The summer system?
As far as, what do you mean?
It feels like it's working okay. Like everyone seems to they get the time off in June. They have that built in. What are the scouts going to be doing, by the way, if people have to report back in mid-June? Does that change their schedule at all?
No, I would think those guys are still doing their summer scouting.
Yeah.
And plus, you're probably not going to get into pads till, if they're talking about a ramp-up period, till end of July, August anyway. So you're talking about a whole month of just similar to what they're doing right now without a break.
Yeah, Tom goes on to tweet, just so I have the full thing here, so I'm not throwing him on the bus. NFLPA's push for a revised offseason isn't directly tied to the 18-game season. However, it's worth noting a longer schedule would further shorten the time between the season and training camp. Another reason consolidating player time off into one long break would make sense. So I think the thinking is that you give them a time off earlier in May or whenever that is, mid-June, and then there's less time for the 6 weeks off to get out of shape, get in trouble, whatever. Everyone's together. You're working towards a goal. But to your point, the mental exhaustion by the time you get to December is different than it would have been had you had those 6 weeks off.
I'm telling you right now, most front offices and GMs, they're into their OTAs right now. You are really starting to count down the days to, like, when can I finally get a break?
Right.
You're just coming off the exhausting pre-draft process. Then all of a sudden, everybody's in a building. Everybody's excited to get everybody in, see everybody. Yeah, how was your break? Blah, 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 blah. Just like when you went back in the second grade, how excited you were excited to see Susie again and Josh and all your buddies. What'd you do over the summer? Yeah. But I can tell you, at this point, I was mentally just wanting to get a break. And by the time you get through the final mini camp, then it's like you're waiting for the end of school, basically.
Right. You're basically showing movies like you do at the end of school to kill time until the final day. I get it. All right. Well, we'll see what happens with that as we march towards that 18-game season. But for the meantime, don't have to worry about it. We don't have to worry about it anyway, because you said you're not going back in the league, and if you go back, I was going to be your
Northeast area scout. You'll be a scout in the corner.
Oh, I thought it was going to be like George Costanza, the assistant to the traveling secretary.
No, I've got to put you in the Northeast.
Oh, okay. All right, fair enough. So I don't have to leave my house. Let's get all the Syracuse games. All right, Rick, that's it. That's a wrap on episode 161. Thanks as always to my guy Rick. Thanks to Harry for producing, and thanks to all you guys who watch and listen. We will see you guys next week.